Now, Minister Motsoaledi has tabled his department's budget vote there. He's highlighting the department's achievements and outlined plans for the current financial year. The minister joins us now to talk some more about that. Minister, thank you so much for your time. We know that you've had a very, very long day and a very heated day by the sounds of that soundbite we just played, and you're joining us from Cape Town. So we really do appreciate your time at this late hour. I could tell by that soundbite that you are now tired of answering questions around Thabo Bester. But unfortunately, this is front and center of one of the biggest stories this country's ever seen, let alone for this year. And I needed you just to clarify for us one more time, because you have said that this falls within the mandate of correctional services, the IDing of those who are within the realm of correctional services is one where you have to follow the lines of regulations. If the Department of Correctional Services reaches out to Home Affairs and said, listen, we've got an issue with one particular inmate, or we've got a massive issue across all our correctional services places where thousands of our inmates do not have correct ID documents, can you help us out by rolling out a program so that we can ensure that most of those who are within our walls of correctional services are finally now properly identified with proper identity documents? Has a reach out of that kind happened? And why have you found this now frustrating, that this has become a sticking point? Because I'm sure you believe that it's not your department that's at fault here.
Good evening, Marcel. No. That's not what was happening. Good evening, and good evening to our listeners and viewers. The argument today was not about what you see, Marcel. Let me just correct. It was about whether Thabo has been identified correctly, whether he is what we claim him to be, whether he's the person who was arrested, and etc., etc. Because the debate was not starting today. It's a member of the DA who, when I announced on the 14th of April exactly who Bester is, who was even doubt, he said, how can I be sure when we didn't do a DNA? And this is what I was responding to. And I told him that we have got a program, Marcel, called late registration of birth, because our policy is that every child must be registered 30 days after birth. After that, it's called late registration of birth. After 1 year, it's even worse, where we go and look for documents from any institution, whether be it a crèche, a kindergarten where you once attended, or a Sunday school, or a church, or a school, even traditional communities, we visit them to ask if they know you, even what counselors, once they write affidavits and collect all those documents, we bring them together in Home Affairs. There's a special tribunal that is put together. When they are satisfied about those documents, they then give it a go-ahead that you can now get your identification. Firstly, a birth certificate, then an ID. Now, I was actually telling Parliament that only when it comes to a push, we do a DNA. And I was arguing that as far as we are concerned, we've identified Thabo Bester correctly even before any DNA. We did not need it because we had documents from Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital after the mother told us about this birthday. And we went into the archives of 37 years ago and found them. She also told us the school which she attended, and we went there, found the documents, as she said. So we were saying that we had no doubt, but still, I then said, having said so, I wanted to announce to Parliament that at any rate, the very first week he arrived from Tanzania, the police did the DNA and it was matching. So I was saying this matter must come to a rest as to whether we are really dealing with Thabo Bester here or somebody else. Basically, that's what the debate was all about.
I understand that. I was trying to get more of a bigger picture of perhaps a broader issue at correctional services. But before I let you answer that, are we now at a place where Thabo Bester will finally be issued with an identity document?
Yes, he will be. He is a South African.
Okay, so that is going to happen. If we could go back to the broader issue, however, when Thabo Bester and his so-called accomplice was arrested, there was a comment from the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, who said at the time, and it was probably an offhand comment at the time, and I do believe it looks like you've been load shed in Cape Town as we speak, but we'll continue the conversation, Minister, that it seemed as if that there were thousands of inmates that didn't have correct identity documents. And at the time, that started a whole conversation about whether this is a bigger issue at hand. And then you were quoted saying that if correctional services did reach out to you to say there was an issue with regards to a number of inmates not having identity documents, then you'll be able to get involved. But up until then, the issues of ID documents for inmates inside correctional services facilities is not for Home Affairs to answer. Where are we at with regards to that issue right now?
No. Marcel, all I was saying is whether correctional services or what, any institution that can call Home Affairs and say people have got no IDs. A school, whether times we are called to some NGOs, for instance, for the disabled, etc., we go. So whether it's correctional service, anytime when people call us and say, look, we think this institution needs IDs, it's the job of Home Affairs to give such IDs. Basically, that's what I was saying. For instance, I even reported to Parliament today that throughout its history, Home Affairs used to have 100 mobile trucks, but we have increased them by 20. And on top of that 20, we have ordered 100 more because we want to cover the length of the breadth of the country wherever they call us. For instance, some members of Parliament will say, I'm going to my constituency office. Can you bring a mobile with me? We actually do so. Some ministers will say, look, I am going to meet my community to talk about human settlement or SASA. Can you send mobiles to do so? We always do that. Sometimes provinces tell us that the cabinet is going out for cabinet meets the people. Can you send mobile? So it is our job. But all I was saying is that if anybody comes across people who are not identified, who don't have identification, and inform affairs will go. But we can't second guess. We can't just wake up and guess and say there must be an institution where people have no IDs without that institution telling us.
Now, one final question about Thabo Bester before we move on to other matters. We believe that somebody who has been mentioned as a person of interest in this Thabo Bester story, she's known as Dr. Pashu, Mereka Nchani. She has now issued out a statement saying that she's demanding an apology from you as the Minister of Home Affairs, Motsoaledi, and this is in relation to comments that you've apparently made during a press briefing back in April relating to the escape and that pair's deportation. And of course, one of them being found in possession of 2 passports of this Dr. Pashu, who's quite well known in certain circles. She's now threatening legal action against you unless you retract your statements, she says. What's your comment on that?
Well, I'm not commenting. I'm leaving it to her. She's the one who issued that statement, and I don't want to comment about it. Let the process unveil itself.
Okay, Minister, in your budget speech today, you also spoke of a massive investment, billions of rand, 6 billion, going to improve border control. And we also know April was that deadline for the latest addition to that Border Management Authority, the BMA that we've heard so much about. Do you care to update us on how that implementation has gone and how, just very shortly, how that 6 billion rand investment is going to be used to shore up this new management authority?
The 6 billion rand was just a very wild estimate. We will know the actual cost after the bidding process, because I announced today that the Minister of Finance have come to the party. He has written us on the 6th to give us a go-ahead that we can issue requests for proposals, meaning we are now asking the private sector to come and put up that massive infrastructure with a huge injection of technology. Only after the bidding process will know how much it will cost. And you are right, it's going to be a massive process. But up to so far, the establishment of BMA as a standalone, that means an autonomous entity, has gone very well according to schedule. From the 1st of April, it became a standalone entity. Remember, for the past 2 years, it was incubated as a branch in the Department of Home Affairs. The 1st of April, it has absorbed people from health, from agriculture, from environment, and we have sent all the immigration officers at the borders to it. They are all employees of the Border Management Authority. They all work together now. Now, this issue of infrastructure injection is just to make sure that moving in and out of the borders is a smooth thing. The issues of trucks, congesting there will be a thing of the past. And that's what this whole injection is all about. And also it will assure that what we call a one-stop border post, whereby when you go through the borders, you don't queue on the South African side for 3 hours and cross no man's land and go on the Zimbabwean side, make queue again for another 3 hours or so. We are saying you are going to be processed only once in this issue called one-stop border post.
And moving swiftly from that talking point, another one, of course, being the controversial Electoral Amendment Act. Now, earlier this month, you submitted possible amendments to that portfolio committee. You then also delivered a presentation to the committee on amendments that need to be made specifically to the Political Party Funding Act. Can you update us as to where we are with that right now?
It was a consequential amendment. Marcel, consequential means it's not the minister or the president or anybody who decides that there must be amendment. Just by passing the Electoral Act, just by amending the Electoral Act as the Constitutional Court has instructed, then you were forced to amend the Party Funding Act. The reason is that the Party Funding Act was passed in 2021. It never accommodated independence because they were not there. So once the independents are now accommodated in terms of this Amendment Act, then you are forced consequentially to amend the Party Funding Act and to accommodate them. That is what the amendment is all about. So what I did, I drew a framework and parameters under which the amendment must happen and gave it to political parties, to members of political parties in the portfolio committee, and said must go to their political parties to consult and come back and tell us what they think about the framework so that we can go with the work of amendment. Because independents, now that they are going to be allowed to contest, they must also be funded. But the act that exists up to so far is funding only political parties.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for your time this evening in the midst of your load shedding in Cape Town. Home Affairs Minister Motsoaledi joining us live from the Mother City. We presented his budget earlier. We thank him for his time this evening.